everyone. I'd like to call the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or CAMPO, to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Sorry.
Here.
Chair Bagwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte.
Here.
Member Dodson.
Here.
Member Erb.
Here.
Member Henderson. Member McQuarrie.
Here.
Member Novak.
Here.
Ex officio Member Rosenberg.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're now on agenda item number 3, which is our public comment opportunity. I didn't see anyone sign up, but since it's so brand new to everyone, let me put that out there one more time. Any public comment? Okay. Then we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is the approval of our minutes from February 9th. Has everyone had a chance to read them? Anyone see any corrections? Seeing no, I will accept a motion for approval, please.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Just for the record, to let everyone know, I think John Erb is here from Douglas County just to sit in until his formal appointment, I think, is coming shortly. So thank you very much for coming. I guess we missed you. You can come back and visit with us. I like this. He used to serve prior. So we're now going to move on to agenda item 5A, which is discussion only, presentation and update on our transportation system. Let me get there. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. I wanted to kind of give the CAMPO board a brief update on the Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan. This is a plan that was kicked off, well, actually, I'll just get into the presentation. What the heck?
There you go.
Project background. So this is a technical document intended to guide local jurisdictions, CAMPO staff, and NDOT in making decisions related to how we operate and maintain a lot of our ITS and traffic signal type infrastructure. This is really assist the city's asset management system by collecting a bunch of data related to our traffic signals and other ITS infrastructure, school zone beacons, crosswalks, things like that, and putting that through our asset management database so we can store and track and understand how our system operates short-term and long-term. Project kicked off in the fall of 2020, and we have consultant support. Kimley Horn is our consultant on this, doing the majority of the work on the project. This project is funded through an agreement with NDOT, so they're certainly one of our partners and stakeholders. The project includes several major tasks. Those highlighted in orange have been authorized for use under the contract, so they're doing project management. Kimley Horn is doing project management, stakeholder engagement, which I'll touch on in a second. A lot of the asset management planning, which includes data collection, existing conditions, things like that. And then ultimately, that'll get rolled up into a system management plan report. 2 tasks there, which I'll touch on at the end, are performance measures and benchmarks, traffic signal optimization. Those have yet to be authorized, and that's just because we're kind of waiting to see the results of the asset management so we can better craft specific scopes of work for those elements. We don't want to try to scope something out that we can't implement or try to achieve going forward. The general goals and objectives of the system management plan are outlined there on the screen. I won't read through all of them, but we're really trying to get a big picture understanding of how our transportation system here operates from a traffic operation standpoint, as well as from a signal maintenance, lifecycle costing component as well. Really looking to make some better data-driven decisions. You know, I think as we've talked at this board and at the RTC board as well about having different modal plans, whether it's the Western Nevada Safe Routes to School Master Plan or the ADA Transition Plan or JAC TAM plans and other plans. This is one of the areas that was sort of lacking in understanding how we operate our system. So by having this plan, again, it can roll up into the RTP and help us better prioritize and understand our needs and our projects going forward. Project really consists of numerous stakeholders, since it is sort of the greater CAMPO region. It includes Carson City, Douglas County, Lyon County. Story County is also a member of this, and they've been participating in our meetings, and of course NDOT. And we're really looking for a variety of support from those stakeholders, including, sort of high-level visioning. Where do we want to go? How do we want to take this? Decision making. The stakeholder group gets some preliminary reviews of documents that we create, and we provide them periodic updates on the milestones. it's really kind of that group that we kind of bounce ideas off of and collaborate with as the project develops. So getting into a little bit of history of the data collection effort, our consultant, Kimley Horn, used essentially a truck to drive around all of the signalized intersections. They did LiDAR data collection, and it was able to extract different components from our systems. It was able to extract features such as detection cameras shown up there on top in the orange circles. It was able to detect the signals and the preemption devices, and it was able to detect the pedestrian push buttons and the pedestrian signals there. So they were able to really pull that from the LiDAR just by driving around, and that's how they, rather than doing in-person, field surveys. There were some in-person field surveys. CAMPO staff did a lot of assessment of curb ramps. We did some information regarding streetlights, those streetlights that are maintained by Carson City or other agencies versus streetlights that are maintained by NV Energy or privately owned streetlights. And so we were able to kind of coordinate that and put that into part of our database. Ultimately, we collected a variety of information. We collected information at 73 signalized intersections, 22 signalized pedestrian crossings. Those are RFBs or other types of beacons or flashing signals of some fashion. Flashing beacons, these could be school zones or other beacons like perhaps the roundabout over at 5th Street and Fairview. Those have flashing beacons in advance, and a variety of other elements associated with this. Supports, those are just for reference, those are like poles or posts. Those support the elements. So like a signal pole has many items attached to that one support. So I just want to kind of clarify on what a support is for background. In addition to the actual field data collection, we did some kind of internal mining of data and information. So these we termed as logistical elements, and these are really those special event procedures, signal timing policies, existing staff and staff level requirements and funding mechanisms and spares inventory. At the Public Works Yard, we maintain a large stockpile essentially of mast arms and poles such that if something were to get hit, we have a replacement. And so we're analyzing that so we can better understand, do we have a bunch of poles out there that maybe they're not in service anymore? Can we use those? Do we not have any spares of all of our poles? So we're kind of using all that data and understanding where our needs are going forward. And we're looking at our existing agreements with our partner agencies, whether they're Lyon County or Douglas County. Carson City has agreements with those counties to maintain their traffic signals, not only in CAMPO, but as the county as a whole. Carson City also maintains NDOT's traffic signals on NDOT facilities in the region as well. So when we look at all that data we collected, we're trying to understand, okay, what is our need here? And so we're looking at existing infrastructure and those logistical elements, as I mentioned. We're looking to identify program deficiencies and outline some potential recommendations for making improvements. And we actually kind of, to assist this, we completed an agency workshop loosely based on FHWA's capability maturity framework for transportation systems. So I'll kind of walk through this a little bit. But essentially what we did is we created these dimensions there on the column on the left side of the screen that we kind of broke down our organization into these different dimensions. And then we looked at, okay, of these dimensions, how well did we do? Level 1, we do this a little bit. Level 2, we do this okay. Or level 3, we do this really well. And our goal was, through a variety of metrics and just discussion with the group, the stakeholder group, was in these areas and all of our topics that we discussed, we identified where are we today, and then we tried to identify where would we like to go. Is our goal level 3 for everything that we talked about? Or if we're at level 1 now, is it the best we can do, or is our benefit just to get to level 2? Is that our goal? Because we have limitations in our infrastructure, because we have limitations in our staffing, where do we want to get to? So in some cases, we went from level 1 to level 3. In some cases, we went from level 2 to level 3 or level 1 to level 2. There was different combinations depending on the individual example. So kind of to give a little bit more detail into this, one of the ways we were able to kind of outline this is how quickly do we want to achieve this? So not only do we want to get there at some point, but how quickly, short-term, mid-term, long-term. So an example that we came out and discussed at the meeting was we wanted to have agencies collaborate to upgrade standards and requirements for consistency in technology. The goal being we wanted a kind of a uniform traffic signal system so that if we needed spare parts across the agencies, we didn't have to buy different things to maintain all the same signals. And so we thought this would be a good way to communicate and start understanding how we could have a more unique or consistent technology across our system. And so we broke that into steps of like, here's the first step to start moving in this direction. Here's the step 2, here's step 3. So as this gets compiled and as we get forward and more into the report itself, we'll identify these priorities, and there'll be steps identified to take us through to get us to that level that we want to achieve. So that's sort of an example of how we work through the workshop and identify different steps going forward. Another component that we're working on right now is in regards to the life cycle costing. And so this is a component where we're evaluating the service life of our parts and equipment. We're looking at replacement schedule needs based on best practices. And we're looking at our staffing needs and capital budgets for us to maintain and make those changes. So we're looking at traffic signal systems. We're looking at the vehicle detection. We're looking at all the ITS infrastructure. A number of them are listed there on the screen in orange. And essentially what we're doing is trying to understand, short-term and long-term costs of our system. Other portions of the project that have really kind of yet to be kicked off, because as we understand our system and we understand what we have and what we need, then we can start implementing, okay, where do we want to get to, and how are we going to track our measurement and progress to achieving where we want to get to? What are our benchmarks, and what are our performance measures for tracking those benchmarks? The existing Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, has a number of existing performance measures documented in it. And those in green are those performance measures. We measure those by those items in orange. So for instance, safety, increasing the safety of the transportation system, that is our goal. And how do we track that? We measure that through our safety targets. For maintaining and developing a multimodal transportation system that supports economic vitality, how do we do that? We're measuring bicycle, pedestrian, and transit use in the CAMPO region. So through this project, the System Management Plan project, we're looking to use these performance measures and find out, okay, how do we want to measure this? Can this program implement new performance measures to better track how we're doing in the CAMPO region? So for instance, third one down, increase the mobility and reliability of the transportation system for all users. Right now, we rely on data that's gathered by NDOT we're using interstate and non-interstate travel time reliability supplied by NDOT. Perhaps we can identify individual corridors through this study where through signal retiming, we could do kind of a before methodology and then an after implementation methodology. And we could track that over time. If it starts to degrade, maybe additional changes are needed to that corridor. And so we can look at creating those performance measures and setting those benchmarks for us to be able to track our system in the long term. We haven't started that process quite yet, but that is sort of the next step after the life cycle costing of where we're going to go with this project. So just want to have that little highlight there. Specifically, from the needs assessment workshop, we did identify some initial areas to evaluate. These are shown here on the screen. Wanted to establish what data can be collected to identify where systems and technologies can be leveraged for that data. Do we need to investigate potentially methodologies to automatically count vehicles at signals, right? We have detection systems that track vehicles and tell the signals when to change their light, but there are other softwares out there that can track bicycle and pedestrian use. Is that something where we wanted to go? We want to be able to leverage and use existing performance standards such as the ARTIS system that NDOT uses. And so we're going to coordinate with the state in obtaining some of that information. We want to be able to share data in efficiency between multiple agencies. Can we work with our partners in Douglas County or Lyon County better to coordinate how we see the transportation network versus how they see the transportation network? And then we want to focus on individual data elements to track incremental improvements. As I mentioned, the corridor, if we identify a corridor where we retime signals, how are we going to track that and how are we going to make those incremental improvements through this study? So future tasks, I've touched on the performance measures a little bit after that. Once we have those performance measures and benchmarks, we're going to look at selecting a corridor and seeing how can we make improvements to this corridor. Are there signal timing? Is there equipment changes to be needed? Can we provide additional detection to vehicles to eliminate certain signal conflicts and things like that for people to move through a corridor more efficiently? But essentially, we're also looking to desire more of a data-driven approach rather than a somebody calls and says, this signal's not working, can we identify things a little bit earlier and kind of head off some of those concerns? We want to also be better at understanding when it's appropriate to retime our traffic signals. Right now, it's sort of as something arises, we take a look at the corridor and make adjustments as needed. But is that the right approach? Are there other methodologies we should be doing? And how do we do that, not only from one person, but is there 2 or 3 staff who can be familiar with how to do that going forward? Ultimately, all of this will be summarized in a report. We're working on, like I mentioned, getting these other sections going forward. We have continued meetings with our technical advisory committee, and we plan to kind of roll this out not only to this board, but in a sort of a public setting as well. We have planned to do meetings at our other partner agencies, their boards as well, to provide them an update on this study as we get near the end. But one methodology that we've tossed about here or there is maybe creating a method to provide that ongoing reporting. Maybe that's in the CAMPO monitoring report, or maybe that's some sort of potentially online dashboard where we report, hey, corridor times or other types of metrics going forward. So those are just some ideas that could come out of this study and what we're looking for, carrying the results of this going forward. So that's kind of a high level. I just it's been a long time since this board has heard about this study. I just wanted to refresh everybody and keep everybody in the loop as to the status of that. There's definitely quite a bit more work to do, and so we're continuing to plug away with support from our consultant. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does any member have a question? Mr. McQuarrie?
Yeah, Chris, maybe you could refresh my memory. So Carson City maintains all the signals within the CAMPO area, is that correct?
And all the Douglas County signals, such as those at South Lake Tahoe and down south in 395, as well as those in Story County. I think there's some discussion with Story County, maybe the Tri-Center, but last I knew, we were still maintaining the signals out of there, like at Electric Avenue and things like that on USA Parkway. That could be changing, though.
Right.
So.
And right now, if there's, someone says, well, there's a timing issue or maybe you need to change the phasing, you sort of respond as the queries come up, sort of like now. And this system would try and make that more formalized in terms of identifying needs and efficiencies.
Yes, I think, and I don't want to speak for James Jacklett, our control systems operations manager, but I think we do a very good job of trying to respond as quickly as we can based on the concerns that come in. I mean, oftentimes we'll have somebody say, this signal's not working, and he's able to mobilize, his staff to get out there and take a look at that. They do a great job at responding and taking care of instances as they come up.
Well, if we get software that can see bicycles, I would be really happy. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Mr. Dotson, did you have a question or a comment? Or
No, I don't.
no? Okay. Mr. Novak?
Yeah. This looks familiar.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
It's good.
Yeah.
Question, where do you guys stand now on the overall architecture, the regional architecture? Because for things to keep working, you got to maintain the architecture and tie all the pieces together, including the transit aspects of ITS.
I think the short answer is it varies. There are certain traffic signals that are tied together throughout the city, and there are others that stand alone. We have the ability to communicate with all of Carson City's traffic signals. I don't know that we have the ability to communicate with Douglas County's, and so it takes somebody going out there and making changes. Right now, our system doesn't have any relationship or correlation to any transit operations. I don't know that that's the best approach. We're looking at this study will help us identify if there's a need in certain corridors to provide that, but it's really focused on right now just sort of interconnection of individual signals more so than it is a big picture with the region.
Right, and it sounds like the NDOT system on the freeway is separate from this, but
It is
under
separate.
architecture and everything, you should be coordinating all the time because there's some signalized interchanges, right? So just keep working
There
on
are,
that
yes.
as well. On the operations side, does this group deal with the Traffic Incident Management Coalition that NDOT has for special events? And with the fire last summer, coming down and it's real-time operations, and the more you can do in advance to tie those things together, the better off we'll be.
This particular study was looking at some special event policies and looking at better communication structures, right? If something like that happens, what is the process of coordinating, adjusting signal timing to get people out of a particular area? I personally have not been involved in any of those specific elements, such as a fire or something like that of late. But I think if this study could identify a need or a framework for better communication, then, the individual agencies could work together to implement that communication strategy.
I figure it's a work in progress, and you guys are making
It is a
good
work in
progress.
progress, yes.
And if you want a suggestion for a corridor, I'd say Carson Street 395 down to Douglas.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I appreciate you bringing that up. The other one,
Just one intersection in reality, yeah.
well, the other
It'll be a
one,
while before the freeway's done, I know, but yeah. Okay.
well, that's a great suggestion. The other one we've thought about, well, two others we've thought about is William Street from Gold Dust out to maybe College Parkway, or potentially College Parkway up from Morgoni and the freeway and research and retail. And there's a several, those are some good corridor candidates for looking at some improvements, yeah.
Well, and even if you're on Fairview after 6:30 PM, it continually stops you because you think you're going to have freeway inputs, of which you have none. And so I get a lot of complaints for that area, time-wise. It's great during the day, but at night you're stopping traffic for no reason. So again, just because you think there's a freeway and it's tied in, it doesn't mean it's fulfilling the correct need at certain hours. So lots of them. Great job. When do you anticipate this project will be completed?
I think we're going to shoot for early next year, early 2023.
2023?
Yeah. There'll be a period where we want to try to implement. So we identify performance measures and benchmarks. Let's try to implement something through signal timing. Let's track those. Did we meet our goals? Did we not meet our goals? Do we need to make adjustments? What are the best strategies? So there'll sort of be an implementation period where we'll kind of just let things run for a while and then come back and kind of close the loop. So.
Okay. I don't see anybody else. Yeah. Don't see any other questions or comments. And again, one last time, I didn't see any public signing up over there, but as we get in this pattern. No? Okay. Thank you so very much for your presentation. This was a non-action item, so we're going to move on then to agenda item number 6, which is just the transportation manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a number of items I just want to touch on real quick. First of all, I want to introduce to the CAMPO board Scott Bohemir. He's our new Safe Routes to School coordinator here in the city. He's back
welcome.
there in the audience. So he
Welcome.
joined the city mid-February. I also wanted to give a little quick summary. Staff have been looking at the grant opportunities in the Investment Infrastructure and Jobs Act, or the bill, or the latest infrastructure law. I don't know what everyone's calling it. The EJA, I think, is the latest term. I don't know. So we're looking at some different grant opportunities and different requirements and new funding opportunities that come through that bill. I don't know, maybe Sandra does, if there's any update for apportionments, or appropriations, if that's been signed in. To my knowledge, there hadn't been yet.
It has not been signed. We're seeing movement in the House today. They've released their final numbers. It hasn't all been signed off. So we're hoping it all gets done by Friday. There's a good chance there's a very short few day continuing resolution, and we have actual appropriations next week.
Okay.
Hope.
Cool, great. Thanks. So just a little background on that. Yesterday, last month, last CAMPO board meeting, Sandra and I gave a presentation on NDOT's Sustainable Funding Advisory Working Group. Yesterday, there was another meeting with the group down in Las Vegas. It was a good discussion about many of the funding mechanisms. We're working really to narrow down the options, and we started looking at some different scenarios of how you can layer the options to get to that statewide funding gap. So it was a good discussion down there. There'll be another meeting up here in April to further provide, some direction and discussion as far as that report continues to get advanced going forward. CAMPO staff are continuing to work on the Unified Planning Work Program, or the UPWP. We should have tentatively planned to have a draft to this board next month, April, with our draft kind of outline of our work program for the next 2 years. for adoption in May going forward. I'm working with NDOT on the agreement and the funding side of that as well. And lastly, I wanted to note, and I probably regret saying this as I have last month, the pavement survey. We've been looking at the data so that we had some discrepancies on certain roads where the roads were suddenly, healing themselves. And so
They were better than last year's report?
there were a few
Yeah.
roads that were better. So we're like, okay, what's going on? It turned out there's some issues with rutting that weren't captured. It was collected as part of the survey, but that data didn't get put into the database. And so we're adding that rutting data into the database. And initial indications are, okay, this is making more sense. We're seeing the trends become similar to what they had been. So that's sort of the reason it wasn't on this item, is we found that little error with the rutting issue. So hopefully I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for April with that report. So
Well, I like your other answer, that they're self-healing. That would take
wish.
care of
I
all
wish
of
it
our,
was self-healing.
like, that should be one of the things coming out of the study, to say that is our
Self-healing
funding
roads.
mechanism, is self-healing roads. Yeah. Thanks.
and that was what I had. So thank you.
Great. We'll move on to item 6B. Does any member of the board have any future agenda items or thoughts or anything to share with us? You guys,
Just
please.
following up to what Sandra was talking about, checking the news, the omnibus bill, the continuing resolution. If Congress ever does it, it looks like there's more earmarks coming, right? But earmarks usually mean there's not enough to do the complete project, but it's better than not, right? So
Yeah, we have quite a few earmarks in the city in different bills, so keeping our fingers crossed. We keep getting told that you're going to hear by next week, but I don't want to say it on the record because it makes me wrong all the time. So, yeah. Great. Sandra.
Yeah, since you brought that up, we were a group of us from NDOT leadership were in DC last week meeting with the delegation, and our number one priority was pass the appropriations bill. The number two was fully fund the highway trust fund, figure out the funding piece so we don't have to continually count on general fund appropriations. We did get asked by a few members for requests for next year's appropriations bill. So they're already asking for those earmarks for future years. And our response was, let's pass this bill and then we'll talk about what our needs are there in future years. But they're already looking at next year's bill.
question on MPO planning in general in Nevada, since, ex-federal employee, 85% of Nevada is federal land, right? I used to kid you about that it's only 15% state. But the outreach that NDOT tries to do in MPOs for either the federal agencies like BLM or Forest Service and all the tribal entities, are you guys working on that at all? Or I don't know if it affects CAMPO directly, but in some cases it should.
You're reminding me of all the things I didn't have written down. He's like prodding my update. There you go. Actually, we're working with our Federal Highway Division office right now on scheduling some tribal listening meetings across the state. Those haven't been scheduled yet. They're determining the best approach to that. And we are working with Central Federal Lands, Federal Highway Central Federal Lands, on a statewide planning effort for federal lands transportation. There's a number of programs that are sort of outside of our control, yet they're supposed to be in our planning documents, and there's not always the coordination. Things like FLAP, which you guys have been successful at before. So we're working with that office on there, and then the state is finalizing their outdoor recreation plan, which looks at a lot of, access to federal and state lands, and we're cooperating with them on how do we integrate, the federal lands transportation planning work with the outdoor recreation plan. And in fact, in a couple of weeks, we're likely to going to be signing a sort of a cooperative agreement with a lot of the federal agencies, DCNR and NDOT, in terms of just, enhancing that cooperation between the various federal agencies and the state agencies for planning.
Anybody else? Nothing else? Okay. Well, with that, then we're on our final public comment, agenda item number 7. Still don't. No one's rushing up to sign in. What's going on around here? But just again, one more call. Okay, with that, then we are adjourned as the CAMPO. Thank you all for a good meeting. Give us just 5 minutes and we'll come back as the RTC. Thank you very much.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Perfect. Hey, I'm going to call the Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Shudi,
Here.
Commissioner Dodson,
Here.
Commissioner McQuarrie, Commissioner Novak,
Here.
a quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're now on agenda item number 3, which is our public comment period. I believe that Ms. Formaster wanted to make public comment. She signed up. Thank you so much. Hi. We're great.
My name's Dee Dee Formaster. I'm here with the Rural Center for Independent Living, talking about accessibility again. And I just want to make it clear that we're still having problems with sidewalk accessibility. Okay? I don't know if we need to retrain everybody that gets contracts or what we need to do, but Highway 50 again, they were doing work over there, which needs to be done, granted, and it's important that we take care of all of our areas there that need to be repaired, and we definitely need some new piping in here and there, but very poor signage. And people were walking in the middle of Highway 50 to go around the construction. And so I did call Chris. He was wonderful. They did have it corrected by the time I drove back through. But Long Street was a disaster the other day. I pulled over, took some pictures, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You're blocking the sidewalk on both sides. You can't do that." And I said, "I'm taking pictures to draw up a formal complaint." And they said, "Well, we'll fix it." And I said, "Well, you need to fix it because this is a low-income neighborhood. They're right up against, the area where seniors are. And seniors are going to be using those sidewalks. And they have them both sides blocked. And improper signage or no signage at all. And so when I drove through the next day, it was much better. But, it's not only the street people that have contracts with us. The tree people are out trimming trees. And they had both sides of Fifth Street blocked with absolutely no one directing traffic. And they had two big trucks parked like this, one on one side, one on the other, so that only one lane could go through. Nobody was out there directing traffic. And it was right before school was going to let out, and both sides of the sidewalk were blocked. And St. Teresa's is right up the street from there. And you know how children are. They're not really, school's out, we're excited, and they're not really paying attention. And I just am concerned that those sidewalks at least be available on one side. So that's all I wanted to bring up, that we still have some major work to do in this area. So I'm hoping that Chris, which I'm sure he will, remind all the people who have contracts to please put in proper signage and please not block both sides of the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking after all of us to be safe. Thank you.
So I can just in general ask her discussion today about blocking both sides of a sidewalk. Do we already have code that addresses that issue? And so if you're doing trees was a great example there. Does when they're going to go and cut trees? Do they have to come in and tell us and even do a permit or anything for that?
Yes, so when a company like NV Energy comes in and they want to close the road for whatever reason, whether it's trimming trees or doing power line work, they would have to come in through our community development office and submit for a permit and submit a traffic control plan. It is one of our standard comments is to provide ADA accessibility when sidewalks are closed.
And so then the process really is what she's saying, because we're not going to go and check all of those.
I do know,
Right, so it's really a complaint-driven activity that sends our team out to, I'm just enjoying putting this on the public record too, because other people might be listening, so where is the proper place for someone to put the complaint in if someone's not doing that?
so I think there's a variety of places. Yeah, there's a variety of places. I think Carson Connect is a good one. Certainly you can call me or any other member of the city and we can run out there and take a look to see what the issues seem to be. Other, I think our ADA transition plan or maybe our JAC Title VI plan does have some formal documents that you could fill out and complete. I wanted to provide that as an option. Mayor Bagwell, I just wanted to also say that when our projects, our construction projects, we do have specific contractual language in our contracts that specify that at least a route shall be provided. We can't always guarantee that it's ADA compliant because not all potential routes are ADA compliant, but we have to preserve some methodology to detour those pedestrians around it. And I appreciate Dee Dee bringing up some of those issues.
I just, the tree guy laughed at me and I said, you think this is funny? I'm going to get out and take pictures and turn it a formal complaint. I said, this is not funny, you know, and people just don't take it seriously. And I think it's a very serious thing. Public safety, especially in regards to our children, is absolutely vital for our community, and our disabled folks need to be able to have accessibility to the sidewalks. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do I see any other public comment? She's the other one that signed in, but I'll just double check one last time. Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of our minutes of February 9th, 2022. Did anyone have any corrections or updates? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for approval.
I'll move to approve the minutes of January the 12th, 2022.
I second.
Oh, wait a second. Actually, I'm going to take just one brief moment recess because I think we have a technical. Yeah, I think we have a technical. We're just going to check something just really quick to look at the posting online for the actual minutes. We can, because we'll have to make the correction. Sorry, we can't accept them as in the packet because I think we have to do a date correction, right? On the very top header. Right. See, I'm paying attention. I'm like, wait a second. Is that correct? So all of the material was given to the public is correct? Just a heading error?
Yeah, it's essentially public got.
The public
I'll
got the.
double check that the public got this and.
So what we're going to do, So if I can have a correction to the heading of the minutes to reflect February 9th, 2022. If later we find out that there was a posting problem, we'll bring it back at a future meeting. But otherwise, let the record reflect that item 4, that it's the minutes of February 9th, 2022. So is that a corrected motion?
Yes, that's a corrected motion.
And the second correction stands? Thank you. So all those in favor of approval of the February 9th, 2022 minutes with the correction noted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5A, which is a presentation and discussion regarding the Jump Around Carson City Monitoring Report and our long-range fiscal. I see a dual team ready to go.
And I'm going to start this one off if
You're
you
going to
don't
start
mind.
it?
Yes, thank you, Madam
Absolutely.
Chair.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to give a quick summary. So before I turn this over to Alex to talk a little bit about Jack operations and Marquise to talk a little bit about Jack funding, I just wanted to kind of give a little background presentation here. So real quick, transit, I think as many of you on this board know, is somewhat complicated. There's a variety of funding options and match requirements and things like that. And I'm still learning this as well. It's a lot to figure out and a lot to decipher. And I think as we all work in the transit industry, the more we do, the more we try to figure things out and they change on us. That's okay. I just wanted to note that, Jack gets most of its funding through direct apportionments from the Federal Transit Administration or the FTA. Generally, we get approximately 1.8 to 1.9 direct apportionments. These are something that's just obligated from the federal government through 5307 funds, and those are just numbers that we use from the federal government standpoint, 5310, 5307, and 5339. We support that with variety of local matches, anywhere from 15 to 50%, depending on the funding source. And we're very creative in the ways that we develop those local matches and are able to leverage that federal funding. Oftentimes we have a number of grants that go back into 2017, and we have a number of apportionments that have been obligated, such as federal fiscal year 22, that we have yet to apply for, that have been essentially apportioned to us. And so Marquise and Alex will kind of talk about a little bit of those high-level summary there. Just as a note, we have been operating our Jack Transit free fare since March of 2020. We've been supported by the CARES Act, the federal legislation, as well as the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA. They've been providing additional funding beyond the 5307, 5310, and 5339 funding that we are standardly apportioned every year. We always work to use our oldest grants first and keep them active, and we are always looking for other opportunities to keep Jack Transit viable and operating to a good, efficient standard. So just wanted to provide that little background, and I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Alex to give us a little summary on operations.
Thank you, Chris. Alex Cruz, Transit Coordinator. So for the 2021 Jack Monitoring Report, staff wanted to continue to highlight 3 aspects of Jack: the ridership, the operations, and the funding. And then we also wanted to begin to look forward to where the service is going in future years. So Jack for 2021 has shown continued resiliency as a transit service. COVID-19 continued to wreak havoc on transit, but Jack stayed alert and agile and has been kept adapting to the changing transportation landscape. Jack continued mitigation efforts like keeping our temporary free fares, increased sanitation on all buses, and keeping masks free on all buses for all the riders. Jack has seen no reduction in service due to COVID-19, something that very few transit agencies can say. Transit ridership saw an overall increase of 85.41% in the second quarter of calendar year 2021. So that's a good sign that transit is starting to make its way back. In November of calendar year 2020, Jack fixed route actually saw its ridership at its lowest level. Only 8,362 unlinked passenger trips for that month during the pandemic. Ridership quickly rebounded, though. In March of 2021, we had 13,602 unlinked passenger trips. That's about 80% of March 2019's number, which was 15,598 unlinked passenger trips. Jack was able to end the year with 132,760 passenger trips, so about 73% of the 2019 levels, showing that Jack continues to be important to the riders that continue to use that service. Jack Assist, which is our paratransit service, saw the ridership dropped to its lowest level in May of 2020 with fewer than 500 rides, actually. But we have seen incremental increases ever since, providing close to 1,500 rides by June of 2021. Jack Assist was able to end the year with 11,250 unlinked passenger trips, but the monthly totals are closing in on those 2019 monthly totals. So Jack submits yearly cost and ridership data to the National Transit Database, as all transit agencies do. So using that National Transit Database data, we can come up with a cost per vehicle revenue hour metric that can be used to compare operational efficiencies between transit agencies. The 2018 is the national averages that were the best available data, so they haven't really updated 2019, 2020, at least for the scope that we want to look at today. So fiscal year 2021, Jack Fixed Route had a cost per revenue hour $85.60 compared to 2018's national average of $136.40. Fiscal year 2021 for Jack Paratransit had a cost per revenue hour of $84.51 compared to a national average of $72.88. That increase is possible due to increased fixed costs as well as drivers and vehicle maintenance costs that had to keep going during those slow ridership months. Jack's fleet is currently made up of 7 fixed route buses, 7 paratransit buses for a total of 14. 2 fixed route buses were replaced in the Jack fleet with smaller vehicles that are able to go between fixed route and paratransit in the last year. So with those changes, our maintenance costs were $45,381 in 2021. And that's compared to $141,988 in 2020. And that just goes to show how vital it is to keep our vehicles in a state of good repair. With that, Marquise is going to discuss a little bit of our Jack funding as well as some of the future projects.
Thanks, Alex. Marquise Williams, Transportation Planner for the record. So I get the privilege of discussing funding, the money, the opportunities, and the challenges. So as Chris mentioned, Jack uses mainly FTA, Federal Transit Administration, formula-based apportionments for both the operation and the capital expenses. So we have 5307, 5310, and 5339 programs, each with different usage and local match requirements. So in FY 2021, Jack spent $1,913,677 between operations and capital, compared to $1,445,414 in FY 2020. Just a moment, if you'll note on the second to last paragraph of packet page 14, the FY 2020 amount should be updated to read 1,445,414. So while capital costs tend to vary from year to year, depending on whether Jack makes capital purchases like buses or supporting vehicles, operating costs are more consistent, and they are tied to the agreement we have with First Transit and generally consider fuel costs and labor costs. As such, they tend to increase over time. In the past, Jack has received Carson City General Fund match dollars to cover operations. However, in FY 2020 and 21, Federal CARES Act money was used for operations, and those dollars were match-free. Thus, as you can see in Figure 3 on packet page 15, in FY 2021, Jack only used 20% as much general fund money as what was spent in FY 2019 or pre-pandemic. Jack was allocated $466,000 in FY 2019 for operations, and it's anticipated that the match requirements will exceed this amount in FY 2023 and beyond. Additional funds have also been apportioned to Jack from the FTA, and these can be leveraged as well with additional local match dollars. Staff are working creatively to find pots of money beyond the Carson City General Fund to satisfy the FTA match requirement. For instance, redevelopment authority funds have been identified as a strategy where we can update sidewalk infrastructure near transit stops in order to leverage FTA dollars. We strive to be efficient with funding. Even with limited availability, staff is proud of the steps we've taken to improve Jack thus far. And to keep that momentum going moving forward, in the near future, we'll be rolling out several new enhancements with the intent to better serve our existing ridership, as well as to make Jack a more viable, attractive alternative for potential new riders. These enhancements include contactless fare and computer-aided dispatch or an automatic vehicle locating software. That's CAT-AVL, and that's the app that riders can use to see where their bus is and how long until it arrives. We have our community-driven route refresh coming up, as well as a bus stop lighting installation, and our downtown transit center, which is currently in the feasibility study. Staff anticipate an increase in ridership as a result of these technologies, which should turn into an increase in revenue. Furthermore, continued investment by Carson City in complete streets complements Jack efforts by helping to bridge the first last mile connection. It's a gap that's faced by riders and often a barrier to ridership. Jack staff look forward to working collaboratively with CAMPO to increase multi-mobility throughout the city and the region. So in conclusion, Jack has been able to withstand a very difficult period in transit history through the resilience of Jack's staff, both at the city and First Transit. We look forward to continuing to provide reliable transportation for the many residents and visitors who depend on us. However, as the match-free federal funds run out, local funding will become critical in both day-to-day operations and continued improvement. So we must continue investing in strategies and technology, as well as identifying new funding streams in order to successfully serve and grow our ridership and meet federal requirements. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Chaz?
Yeah, looking ahead, it seems like we've got a real big problem because, we've got significant millions of dollars in FTA funding, but which also requires darn close to $3 million between the two main funds in match. And downtown redevelopment money to fix sidewalks isn't going to get that far. So are there other, I guess this is a question in general, how do we find that amount of money if we want to take advantage of the federal funds?
Thank you, Commissioner McQuarrie, for that question. I think that is something we're always looking for. We're always looking for different sources and different ideas, and looking for anything we can come across. I think the redevelopment funds, similar is a kind of the current methodology. In the past, we've talked about using CDBG or community development block grant funds in certain transit areas to be able to leverage. They can be used as match. Other funding sources that could be potentially from the state. We currently have our ADSD, or Aging Disabilities Senior. I honestly don't. Alex probably knows the acronym off the top of his. I apologize, but that's a state fund that we can actually use for match as well. And so there's a variety of things we're always looking for, being able to use that to get that match and use those federal dollars. I think to your point, and it's sort of outlined on table 1 on packet pages 16 and 17 of the money that's waiting there, the federal dollars and our local match requirements. So I think you highlight that very well.
As a follow-up, what's the consequence of not finding a match? What happens to the Jack system if we don't get these federal funds?
Well, I think that's a tough question to answer. There's probably 2 different ways of looking at it. One is, what does it take to operate our system, and what does it take to get us to an enhanced system? In other words, is there opportunity to look for other ways to use the federal money, or is there a chance that some of that federal money goes back to the federal government and redistributed in other places? So I think there's sort of 2 discussions: is what does it take to operate, and what's that side, and versus what it would take to just spend the money, essentially.
Yeah, because some of the money would go to new vehicles, for example, right? And others which don't require as big a matches operating, right?
That's
which
correct.
is what we really need to keep going, is at least the existing system. So really the operating, it's all critical, right? But maybe operating, keeping the current system going is what's really critical.
Right.
Question, Mr. Novak?
Yeah, I know it's a small portion, but if you grow your ridership, then your fare should go up a little bit, right? Because what's the normal fare then for the fixed route?
Typically, we charge $1 for our fixed route.
Okay, that's what I thought last time I was on the bus, but that was a couple of years ago, yeah. So if you can grow the ridership, that would help. But I know you're trying to do that every way you can. But yeah, sustainable funding for transit in Nevada is difficult. item.
Yeah, and the way with fares, hopefully we get to reevaluate our fare structure as well, kind of coming up with some of these changes just to make sure that we're keeping up with, increasing costs as well. So, it'll be something that we have to look at as well. So hopefully increase if fare changes and they go up, and then also ridership goes up, that kind of gives us a little bit of help, and that does come off of the operations side first. The way when it comes to FTA funding, you take the fare revenue off of operations only, and so it kind of brings down that match a little bit. So it's helpful in that end as well.
Mr. Dodson?
Alex, did you say that the waiver of the fare is still in effect?
Yeah, it's still in effect. We plan on going back to fares soon. We don't really want to jump into the fares right away, but since we do have that new software coming up, so the contactless fare payment system, once that gets implemented, then we're thinking it's going to be a good time to kind of roll everything out all at once. So the goal is for summer of this year to turn back on fares, and so that should give us a time to let everybody know when we're going to start up, give them plenty of time to get ready, try to train some people on how to use the new software and things like that, and then turn on the fares.
Hopefully, the reinitiation of the fares won't be a deterrent to the ridership.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult
Don't place
to tell.
any bets there. Right. So I think something that I'm interested in, and thank you, staff, I kind of always am looking at the budget picture as a whole, right? Not just transit, because we have roads, and I mean, it's looking at all of our general fund budget and what things are used for match. So I guess what I'm interested on this particular item in transit is to say what general fund dollars, and so what I'm looking at is really doing a little bit better job of forecasting for my outlier years, so that I'm not worrying about this year, what am I worrying about for next year and the year after to even maintain the operations. And so I don't think even status quo match is going to work. And I guess that's really what I'm trying to drive in here is currently the city's general fund provides $466,000. Like you said, then you can look at the individual fares to try and help. We can use the match that's coming in from the senior program. But my concern is the operating costs are going to escalate. We'll be back out for contract and serving in another transit system with TDD and looking at all of that. I'm not seeing that we're going to get an advantageous contract that doesn't have escalators. And so what I'm concerned about is we're not even going to be able to maintain status quo. So I'd like if staff can work on, and I'm happy to work with you, to really be projecting out what we normally do in our regular CIP methodologies. I'd like to see a 5-year plan of this is what I need just to keep providing any service at all, because I see this being actually in danger of not being able to provide the service. And so what I'm going to need in general fund, whether or not as a board of supervisors as a whole will be embracing that or not, I don't know. But if we're not already putting that into the picture, I think we're making a mistake from this level, even if it's to say, we want to see 550 next year and then, right, just for status quo. And then if you can also give me the picture of, hey, we'd really like to implement some more bus stop things or add, right? Because I know often we're asked, add another route or add another thing. Well, I'm worried about even maintaining what we have versus adding. So if that makes sense, what I'm asking for? Okay, so I think that's imperative that this committee really see a bigger picture on this project, because our budget for FY23 on the other side of the house looks like the $466,000. Is that enough to even maintain? Because And it's okay to be honest that, no, I don't know that 466 keeps us afloat. And we have like a 6-month window of time to, are we okay for fiscal '23,
I think we'll take a
July through
look.
June?
I think to your points are well taken. I think we'll take a look at the budget over the next month. I think in April, both CAMPO and RTC budgets are intended to come back to these boards, and so we can have some initial thoughts on certainly next fiscal year, and then initial thoughts on how do we move forward over the next 5 years.
Thank you. So, anybody else? Ms. Schutte?
So, piggybacking on what Mayor Bagwell said, or Commissioner Bagwell. So what data can we also include when determining costs? Is it possible to include anticipated benefits or anticipated savings from increased ridership, or like the normalization of bus use? You know, something that my hope is that with the added convenience and with people actually in this last year riding fare free and seeing that, wow, I really can get from point A to point B fairly easily. This is less expensive and more convenient than perhaps owning a car, or I don't have to worry about this, or I just don't have the money for a car, but I can now work at this place, or I can now go to school because I still have transportation. So is there a way to somehow incorporate anticipated savings?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we can look at. I guess we would just kind of probably work on a way to figure out how we can come up with certain costs and things like that. But I think our goal is going to be to kind of make sure that we're, showing how well we're doing and how well we're doing with our costs, and show that we can be a viable option for other people. And if they see that, then we can see hopefully those changes, and then we might be able to actually see it in the data where, costs are going down, or we're being more efficient again with the way we're running our routes and things like that. So,
And through the viability,
Yeah.
then it creates its own appetite for use.
yeah,
Especially,
exactly.
I appreciated the elements like wide sidewalks and bicycle lanes help riders bridge the first last mile gap. I hadn't thought of that. And yet, it makes complete sense because bus stops aren't at front doors. You have to get there. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yep, one quick comment with the price of fuel
Oh, boy.
skyrocketing
I'm really concerned.
and the buses are free. Is it time to put some PR out there that you don't have to test drive the bus, it's free, right? And do you need a mask to get on the bus yet or not?
We do until the 18th.
Right, it says on the front of the bus, mask required, right? Okay, but yeah.
That's something we'll definitely take a look at. That's a great idea.
Are you concerned that we're actually going to, was there anything inside the contract? I'm actually concerned about the opposite issue coming also, which, is there a provision in the contract that the vendor can request an increase due to fuel costs? I'm concerned we're going to get the opposite problem.
Currently, our
Coming.
vendor,
You can come in, yeah. Because
Mike-
a lot
Mike
of
J-
times, I can't remember the clause, they set a ceiling that if the price per gallon exceeds X, we get to come back and, go ahead.
Mike Jacobs, General Manager for First Transit.
Oh.
The city provides the fuel, so First Transit's
Okay.
not involved in that at all. So that's.
So you're fueling at our
Your fueling
site.
is handled by city.
But we are experiencing an increase to be able to meet the operations of the system, right? We're not getting fuel at $3.25.
No, we are paying for the fuel,
Right.
yes.
So again, overall, all those matches in my operational costs have got to be escalating. That's why I'm saying I'd really like to see some work that we put together just to maintain, but thank you for the clarification. Still the same, just which vendor pays for it, but thank you. right? So are you anticipating this is just going to continue to get worse?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think so. Like, I mean, a perfect example is our first transit contract. It does have those escalations year over year of just anticipating that things go up just due to regular inflation. And then we have, fuel costs that those are considered operational. We have just purchasing things to keep Jack going. All those kind of go into those operational costs, and inflation by itself is already kind of outpacing the fact that, we've been getting the same amount for 2 or 3 years and not adjusting. So just that alone is probably going to make it a little bit more difficult.
We are looking to be efficient, as Alex has mentioned, so I appreciate him mentioning that, and I appreciate Mike coming up and clarifying. Jack does provide service to our community. We only saw a minimal reduction in ridership during the pandemic, when some transit agencies across the country saw 80 to 90% reductions in ridership. So I think we only saw around 30-ish, plus or minus 30% reduction in ridership during the height of the pandemic. And so those riders who are using Jack because they need to use Jack. And so it is a service and does provide that connection to individuals in our community.
Thank you. Okay. And just a last call, any public? Okay. Oh, to come up. Oh, go ahead. You may. And then Dee Dee, you can come up while he's doing that.
I would like to point out to the board that with COVID and with a national CDL driver shortage, if I'm sure you're all aware of, drivers are hard to come by at this point. And I hopefully, if you haven't seen or heard, Tahoe Transportation increased their starting wages to $22 an hour. Reno is paying almost $19 an hour to start, and unfortunately, we're at $15 an hour in our current situation. So keeping and maintaining the quality drivers that we have here that have been able to cover service for the last 2 years during the pandemic is a huge importance. First Transit is taking the opportunity to go ahead and accelerate some of our pay increases for those drivers. But if we want to keep drivers and bring new drivers in, we're going to have to increase those rates in the coming months and years. So I just wanted to put that out there so you're aware of that, and that can be included in planning down the road.
No, I full well anticipate that we're not going to get as favorable as a contract to be able to continue to provide the service. I think I'm not liking the answer, because it means I don't have dollars to do something else. If I'm trying to, again, it's this commission doesn't have to worry about anything else but the ones we're supposed to be focusing on. But I think it's across all of our systems, and so I'm weary already, and we haven't started the budget process. But yeah, thank you, Ms. Formaster.
I just have a quick question. You said there's going to be a rider's app or something like that when ridership starts again to being paid for the bus. The ridership app, is it downloaded on the phones?
Yeah, so we do currently have a Jack app for our fixed route. With a new software company, we're probably going to switch that app to a different app, and that might have a little bit different functionality. And then with our paratransit service, right now we currently don't have a app for paratransit, but there is a kind of a statewide app that's going to be coming out. And so Jack is looking at how we can kind of work with that app and see if it's viable for us as well. But they're still in beta, and they're just doing a lot of work to make sure that it's actually going to be useful for others. But so it's going to be something that we're taking a look at. We're hoping to see if there's options for paratransit software as well as the fixed route side.
While you're looking at it, can you please check to make sure that there's total and complete accessibility as far as using it? Because a lot of times it's hard for people with disabilities to use apps. So you might want to let us know when you are launching that so that we can become more aware of your app so that we can help our folks.
Yeah, definitely. We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Okay, if there's no further public comment, I'm going to close 5A, and we're going to move on to agenda item 5B, which is presentation and discussion regarding the South Carson Complete Streets Project. I show that as Mr. Stuckey.
Good evening, Commission. Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. I want to thank you for the opportunity today to talk about this project. I know, and Commissioner Novak, thanks for the kind of the idea to bring us back here. I think it's good to kind of reflect on projects, particularly one of this significance and size, to kind of reflect and give an update on kind of how the project went and next steps. So with that, I will get going. So I just wanted to show a timeline just to kind of show the evolution of this project, where we are today and kind of where we've been in the past. It started with that corridor study in 2017, which came to RTC and was reviewed and approved at that level. But even further back, I mean, the mayor knows this, the 2014 plan of expenditures for those corridor projects, the 1 8 cent sales tax, and even before that, anticipation of the freeway. So really, this project's been in the works for 10 plus years, probably. So it feels good to kind of complete it and kind of move on. But there's just a timeline there. Tiger Grant Award in 2018 was a very big deal. Obviously, it allowed us to do this project to the scale that we needed to do it. Project design in 2019, we started construction in March of 2020. And then we were able to reach substantial completion and open it up to traffic basically at the end of the calendar year 2020 in December. And that satisfied our Tiger agreement. And then final completion, a couple punch list items and other landscaping items we finished up in 2021. Now we're in the project closeout stage, and that's happening both internally, but also with the Tiger Raise Build, whatever they're calling themselves these days, office, as well as the local FHWA. And I did want to give a shout out and I know Commissioner Novak through his career, but we've had, through this project, there's a lot of reporting that goes on, a lot of interaction with local FHWA, and the contacts that we've had over there have been pretty outstanding through this whole process, helping us guide along, making sure we're doing the right thing at the city to make sure we're in compliance with that Tiger grant. So it's been very much appreciated for us. So we'll close out the project, and then we'll move into the project reporting stage. And so I'll go over that in a slide here. So just, you guys know, you drive the project limits probably every day, so I don't need to go over this, but I do want to just point out a couple of things. The 2-mile separated multi-use path was a big deal, providing that connectivity to essentially the Costco in Douglas County all the way to the roundabout. As you are aware, we're working on another project, a TAP grant project, to connect that to that linear ditch multi-use path. So essentially more connectivity for our path system. So a big deal there. The roundabout is the focal point. One thing, obviously it provides that transition point kind of into the downtown corridor, but it also was, we've done some recent crash data, and we're always analyzing data. But it was one of the lower performing intersections in all of Carson City as far as number of crashes and crash rates. So we're really looking forward to analyzing and keep our fingers crossed. I mean, obviously the purpose of the roundabout, you hope to reduce crashes significantly. So we'll be tracking that data here in the future. And then, sometimes the public is not aware of the major investment that we did in not only like pavement rehabilitation, but also our underground utilities, almost $5 million in stormwater infrastructure, but also water, sewer, fiber optics. So huge investment there. So overall, it's a really great project for Carson City. One thing I want to highlight here, and you're going to see a lot of this with the Williams Street. I know Kelly Norman and Marquise Williams have already been doing a really great job of thinking outside the box and looking at opportunities to keep the community engaged with the Williams Street project. But we're also pretty proud of what we did with with the South Carson Street project. Big priority for the Board of Supervisors and RTC, I know, to keep the community engaged. We had almost, over 30 public meetings for this project. We also looked at kind of outside the box ideas as far as way to keep the general public informed. We sent out the roundabout flyer. I'm sure you have received that. We did it through utility billing to kind of make it a more cost-effective, efficient way to reach a lot of people. So we're proud of that and the effort that was put on there. And then, of course, any project, no matter how well you plan for it and how well you do in the design stage, if you can't deliver it in the end, it's not a successful project, right? So we are proud. I think we did a pretty good job. There was a lot of factors going on during this time. We used the construction manager at risk delivery method, which I know you all are aware of, but essentially Sierra Nevada Construction was with us for a year before we broke ground. So we had a lot of things pretty dialed in by the time construction started. When we put the first shovel into the ground, it was March 3rd. So 2 weeks later, basically the world changed and shut down essentially. So, you know, the construction team, we had to adapt very quickly. If you remember at that time, there was all sorts of different requirements that were happening, the 6 feet separation for construction workers, which is an incredibly challenging thing to achieve on a construction site. So that one thing we put on there, you know, OSHA was looking at, you know, all over cities across the country. But one thing we're really proud of is, you know, we did adapt, we adjusted. SNC did a great job. Our city staff did a really nice job as far as, you know, keeping people safe, satisfying those requirements. And so we're proud to say that we had no OSHA violations and no lost time accidents. Met all the Tiger grants. We don't do these jobs for awards, but it is nice to be recognized every once in a while. And we're recipients of the 2021 American Public Works Association Nevada Chapter Transportation Project of the Year. I just submitted an application for a National Project of the Year award, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for that one, but we're definitely proud of the local award. So what's left? So we, as part of the Tiger Grant, we have reporting requirements. We're going to do 3-year post-project monitoring reporting. So essentially, before the project started, we got baseline data. And really what we wanted to focus on with this project was kind of how well, you know, we have these visions for complete streets and how they can make a corridor safer, how they can provide more opportunities to non-motorists. So that's really what we focus our performance measures on. So you can see we're going to be analyzing data for auto crash rates across the corridor and reporting back on those every year for the next 3 years. And then we'll also be doing bicycle and pedestrian counts, which we bring those monitoring reports forward to you guys, so you'll stay in tune on that. But we're obviously hopeful that this project, you know, accomplishes the vision that we had for it 10 plus years ago. So I just wanted to end, those are the performance measures that we look for when we're doing the Tiger Grant, but there's also other things that we look for across the city on how well a project performs. I mentioned the $5 million of stormwater infrastructure. We had a pretty significant, well, I guess going back, everybody here that lives in Carson City knows that corridor, knows the mall area, has trouble during significant events. We didn't solve all that. It's still in big events. There's going to be some problems, but we put a lot of large diameter pipe along that corridor. So when it rained hard, if you remember the late October, I think early November storm that happened, it was a pretty significant event. Of course, all of us engineers and stormwater operations team were running around the city, but we were also very focused on this project and how it was going to perform. And some of those pictures that I show there, it performed really well. I mean, obviously every storm's different, but we were really satisfied.
We didn't have a kayak contest in that.
No kayaks, which is
Right.
good. So anyway, so we're analyzing that, and we're hopeful that it's going to be, well, we've already seen it perform well. So the other thing, you know, when you see the downtown revitalization projects we do, we also looked at private investment. When you notice when we did a lot of those improvements downtown, there was, you know, the 408 North Curry office building came shortly after that. You also saw a lot of businesses come in, do facade improvements along with the street improvements. So we're tracking that through community development, hoping for more private investment in that corridor, people wanting to be there and think it's a good opportunity for their business along that corridor. And then the last thing I just want to point out was we did form a neighborhood improvement district. So this was a vision of the Board of Supervisors back in 2014. If we're going to invest in these corridors and we're going to put in nice landscaping, we need to have a funding mechanism to maintain that landscaping. The city participates in this, a share, and then as well as the business owners, the property owners around that corridor are assessed to contribute to this. It's worked out really well. I mean, I think they're doing a pretty good job keeping up. And the goal of it, if you keep the corridor nice, again, people want to be in that area. They want to invest in that area. They want to build businesses in that area. So one of the things I'm not sure if RTC is aware of, I know Supervisor Schutte and Mayor Begwell are, but we contract with University of Nevada, Reno, and they do they analyze every year sales tax data across the city. And they break it up not only into the north, east, west, south quadrants, but they also look at it in these neighborhood improvement district areas to kind of see if there's trends of, if you're getting more sales tax growth in those areas relative to other areas. So anyway, something that I think is important to look at on these post projects. So I just wanted to point those out because those aren't maybe something that the general public knows that we're looking at. So with that, hopefully that's what you wanted, Commissioner Novak, when you asked for an update, but that's what I had for you.
Yeah.
So.
I know you're going to be reporting for a couple of years. Do we have any numbers at all on the safety side yet for crashes or monitoring or?
No, we don't, because there's a significant lag in the data. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at least a year, even 18 months that we're seeing from when the city receives the data from the Nevada Department of Transportation. So we're still waiting to get data for even 2020. I believe, right, Chris?
I believe we got 2020 data like a week ago or a little over a week ago.
Okay.
Just recently, yeah.
So we don't know the results yet. And of course, 2020 was under construction. COVID also had a very major impact on traffic volume. So nothing yet, I guess, is the long answer.
Yeah, I think that the design, is good. Also, you have traffic signal improvements and coordination, and that the corridor's actually lit up more than it ever was before on a consistent basis. But it always gets back to the nominal safety, what it should be, and it's substantive, like how are people driving.
Yeah.
So at some point, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just have a general question because I know that we still have roundabout artwork or something to complete. Can you tell me where that is, what stage it's at? And then is that going to even come to this committee? Or where's that process?
Yeah, so no, good question. We've pursued multiple grants for that. We've been unsuccessful. I think one we won, but then when I think it happened, COVID happened and they canceled everything. So we ended up not getting the money. We do have some designated funding, as you know, from redevelopment, a small portion, but I also think we're going to be chasing some other grant opportunities. We've got the new arts and culture director who's kind of put this project on high on their list to pursue. I think we'd want to come back to RTC at least for an update, particularly if that's the direction you want to give, on if that starts to get into motion, so you guys can see some alternatives and what the final piece would look like.
Well, I guess I'm interested in what methodology is going to be used to select the art. Because I'm concerned, I want to make sure that we don't, I want the artwork, don't get me wrong there. But I want to make sure that nothing's being built that's going to turn around and give us crash data,
Yeah.
that we don't want.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that it's coordinated coordinated across all the appropriate committees and
Yep.
commissions, that again, we're making sure the right turn isn't obstructed or that
Yeah.
I love the art, and I think that if I'm an artist type, I might be putting in something tall and has a lot of
Yeah.
depth to it or something. You go, wait a
Yeah.
minute, people need to be able to see through. So I just want to make sure
Well, I can tell you.
that the right committees are looking at the right aspects of the proposal.
Yeah, and I can tell you, staff level Public Works will be all over that, looking at that.
You got
But
where I'm
certainly,
going.
yeah,
I'm
we
like,
have
uh-oh.
that. It's funny that you bring that up because when we were, this is a couple years ago now, but we formed a little subcommittee to talk about what they wanted to see as far as art in that roundabout. And there was a couple suggestions on, they wanted this sign and like "Welcome to Carson City," and then maybe like a tagline underneath, and that was gaining some traction. And then I think somebody spoke up and they're like, well, I think to your point is you don't really want people driving in and like reading a bunch of signs, as they're going through a roundabout. So we are trying to stick to more of a, less text, I guess, to read in the roundabout.
Like a stagecoach and horses
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
that are
Yep.
cutouts, though, not again, not full fill-ins of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to make sure that that project comes to fruition and we do something nice there because it is no performance art. It's not your picture-taking opportunity, right? Because,
Yeah.
oh, great, they're going to stop in the middle of the roundabout so they can take pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, thank you. Anybody, Mr. Dotson?
Yeah, and it seems like the project turned out fantastic as far as I can see. A lot of great features. It seemed like it would be some good opportunities for some lesson learned for future projects for you. A couple things come to mind. First is the CMAR process. And, I would think you saw pros and cons to that, how to refine that, and where that might be applicable in the future. And then also with respect to the roundabout, just wondering, maybe lessons learned in terms of traffic control, how to accommodate pedestrians through the construction zone there, with some upcoming roundabout projects on the horizon. Also, I know there was mention of a striping issue, going back and doing that epoxy striping at the roundabout. So you could possibly give that some consideration, for your future projects.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. As you know, with the CMAR process, I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, a lot of it depends too, like you need, it's the owner side of the CMAR process, you got to be all in, but the contractor needs to give that, it's so important who you get as a contractor for that process. But yeah, definitely lessons learned. I mean, I think on every project, particularly a project of like this scale and complexity, there's always a lot of, you look back and there's never a project that you say we did everything right on it, right? So, and yeah, the striping, the epoxy, and the roundabout, I wish we would have probably gone with that at the beginning, but now we know. So, yeah, no, thanks for pointing that out.
Great. Anybody else? Thank you so much for your presentation, and again, great job on this one. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5C, which is presentation and discussion and an overview of our 5-cent diesel fuel tax for our November 22 ballot question. And Dan, are you going to take us through this item?
I will, Mayor. Thank you, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director, for the record. So this is an opportunity. I know this commission's pretty obviously informed on the diesel tax, but it's also an opportunity to kind of talk about the next steps with the 5-cent diesel tax, as well as inform the public kind of on those next steps and what's coming. The tax is in effect right now. It will go to the November election to determine basically if it ends or if it continues, simplistically said. So I'll go over just a little background. I only have like 2 slides, I think, here. So this all started with Senate Bill 48, if you remember, back in 2019, to allow these small counties, less than 100,000, to enact a diesel tax up to 5 cents. And it basically laid out 2 options. Now it's NRS 373.062, but it laid out 2 options for county commissioners or for us, the Board of Supervisors. Basically, it could be enacted by a 2/3 majority, or it could go to a vote of the people. Our board back in, around the summer of 2020, decided kind of, I'll call it a hybrid approach, essentially to enact the 5-cent diesel tax. This also did come to RTC, and RTC recommended to do the 5 cent, the entire 5-cent diesel tax. So the board selected a hybrid approach, basically to enact it, but to include a sunset provision that it would go back to the people, the majority, or to the voters in the 2022 election. And if they approved, it would continue, and it would sunset if they didn't approve. So that's where we are today. We're preparing for that election. So far, the collections of the tax lag by a couple months, but the latest numbers that I received from finance, we've received about $685,000 over that roughly 16-month period to date. So we've used that to fund design and construction for some District 3 projects, and then some for the upcoming District 4 projects. And just to put it into real basic terms, it basically allows us, we've been in front of you before, the funding gap, it's significant. But it is a big deal for us, even the 400 to 5,000, 100,000. It's basically allows us to do at least one more project a year in each of our districts, which is a big deal to us. And it's a good small step forward to helping kind of solve that funding gap. So I wanted to talk about, I have Aubrey Rolat, our clerk recorder, in the audience, but I just kind of wanted to, her group and the DA's office is kind of leading this effort, but I did want to go kind of through the next steps and what you can expect to see. Per NRS 295-121, we're required to, the clerk recorder is required to form basically two committees, one for the passage and one against it. So that press release is actually going to go out tomorrow to advertise for people to be on the committee and be on the for side or against side. So that'll go out tomorrow. I believe I've got it right here. It'll basically till the end of March, people will have a chance to submit an application. So once the applications are collected, the next step would be to go to the board. And I think at that point, Aubrey, you can come up and correct me if I say anything out of whack up here. But at that point, the board would approve a ballot question and also appoint committee members. Then May, you can see the committee is going to start working on those the opposing and advocating for questions. And then in June, they'll submit those rebuttals to the arguments, and then the final steps there you can see are in July, where the clerk and the DA's office will review those and then bring the final ballot question to the clerk in July 18th of 2022. So that's the tentative timeline of kind of what you can expect. So if anybody's listening out there that's interested in joining this committee, be on the lookout.
And this is Aubrey Rollett, clerk recorder for the record. We will also have on our website the ballot committee interest packet forms. So if anyone is interested, they can go to our elections website and download those forms. They can contact our office, come in. I did bring some packets with me today in hopes that maybe someone would be interested. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. Oh, and we will be publishing in the appeal. It'll go out this Saturday. It'll publish.
And so what happens if you don't get anyone that submits to serve on the committees?
I'm going to learn a lot about a diesel tax fuel.
Still have to write it.
Diesel fuel tax.
So I'm just stressing she's asking for help. There is no bar. The Supervisor Schutte and myself will not participate, but there is no bar from anything that I've read that would prevent any of you from participating. So, because you will not be involved whatsoever in the approval of the ballot measure components. So just, she brought packets, I heard that. And we really don't want to make our poor clerk have to write all sides. She doesn't want to be the pro and the con. So just thought I'd throw that out there that you're not barred from helping. Ms. Schutte and I will not participate in that part, but okay. It's kind of unfortunate where the gas prices are right now. Well, maybe the public will just, show mercy. Yeah. Mr. McQuarrie?
Yeah, with that in mind, it seems like any ballot initiative that involves taxes, and gas taxes are a good example, unless you can sell it effectively or explain it very effectively, people's first reaction is, oh, I don't want a tax, right? And we've seen that over time and time again. I mean, Washoe led the way in gas tax indexing, and Clark County has it. We didn't get it here. In fact, it failed miserably. And I think really it's making or getting the word out that why it's important. I mean, and I'm wearing my RTC hat now. I don't want to lose $500,000 worth of construction money a year. So I guess my sort of question is, what efforts can the city do to explain this and get the word out as to why it's important that the public approve this if they want their streets fixed?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I think there's a number. I mean, just on the record, I mean, we have every year, just to put it in perspective, we have, I think, roughly like $1.5 to $2 million that's available for capital to spend on roadway projects in Carson City. When you think about a reconstruction, full depth reconstruction of a roadway, $1 million gets you about a third of a mile of roadway. So if we're reconstructing a third to a half a mile of roadway, that's over half our budget, essentially. We have 350 miles. Chris can correct me on if I'm wrong, but I think roughly 300 to 350 miles of roadway in Carson City. Right now, we are not even touching our local roads because we simply just do not have the funds to do so, and our roads are failing. Now, you know, I will say 500,000, what I explained, one project's a big deal. I mean, chipping away at one project, it's not going to solve our problems, but it's a big deal to be able to do one project. So I don't want to say 500,000 is not a lot of money, because it is, and it's a project. It's potentially the street that you drive on every day to work or to pick up your kid at daycare, or go to your favorite restaurant. So it does impact the residents of Carson City. And I think you're exactly right. We've been trying to come to RTC, I think, and Chris has mentioned, you know, the effort we're making for local funding to get the word out there. You'll see a lot more of that come out over the next 5 to 6 months. And Commissioner McQuarrie, you're exactly right. It needs to be known to the public. I think our elected officials have done a good job of like letting the public know when they have an opportunity of where we are, where we sit with roads. But every opportunity I think we have at staff level, we can do that as well. So hopefully that kind of pleaded the case as far as why we think it's important. But I think there are some opportunities we can do at staff level to continue to get the word about the importance of not just this, but roadway funding in general over the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I think we all understand that, but I think there's a fair segment of the public that doesn't, simply because they don't really pay attention. And so back to, I think, a plan to actually get the word out as much as possible, whether that's in the paper or whether that's on some sort of media or whether it's in Carson Proud or whether it's going to talking to all the service clubs or whatever it is. I think that's going to be pretty essential if we're going to get it approved.
So I think there's also some barriers to that you might not be aware of, but local governments are not able to advocate for a ballot measure. You know, we are prohibited from that activity. We can provide information, flyers and material in the paper, and we can update websites, but we are unable to legally advocate. But I see 3 bodies sitting here that have every opportunity. I've been quite clear that Supervisor Schutte and myself will not participate, but we can provide information. But that's where it gets really difficult. As maybe you can recall, there was a ballot measure that was successful in Washoe County for their schools, and there was a group that was formed to be that advocate for the ballot measure. I think this one's a little tougher to find a group that's willing to go out and advocate for a gas tax. I mean, it's a tough time that we just happen to fall in right now with everything that's going on globally. But my hope is also, just to let you all know, the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Stuckey, we've been trying to rebrand it so that people understand the difference, because everybody thinks all the roads in Carson City are a local road, but that we can't get to the neighborhoods, right? We're unable to get to the neighborhoods. And so the Board of Supervisors just recently allocated $2.5 million from our American Rescue dollars, so $500,000 per transportation district that was allocated. We're doing, I think the other thing is the public should realize we're doing all that we can. Every single time, for me personally, where I find, oh, yay, we got an extra couple $100,000, we moved $300,000 last year to the school, safe routes to school, right? So we're trying as a board of supervisors to use every resource that we have, but hopefully the public just has to be a partner with us and decide that they want this money to continue and they want the roads to be fixed. And I would have to take, 1/4 of our entire general fund just to keep up. So it's not a reality without some additional funding sources, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And I hope you get some help. Okay. Anybody else?
I had a
Mr.
question.
Nevada?
Carson City has this, but did Lyon or Douglas? Probably not. Carson usually takes the lead on things like this.
Commissioner Novak, it looks like per the DMV information for fiscal year '22, Lyon County has implemented all 5 cents,
Okay, good.
and Douglas County did not or has not yet.
And there's a time lag on how diesel fuel sales are actually coming in, right? So it's, besides heavy trucks, there's a lot of diesel pickups and, a lot of gallons sold in Carson City for this.
And Lyon County did not put a ballot measure to it. They implemented it, and thereafter doing the matches and the stuff, I think in the legislation, because they're going to get I don't call it a truck stop, the ability for their trucks to have somewhere so they can sleep because of the distance and things like that. So the Lyon County Board of Commissioners did it without a sunset and ballot measure.
Good. And I'm not aware of any truck stops or truck parking projects coming in Carson, right? Either at the state or local level. But
No, it was in the Lyon County's arena in that one.
all right, thank you.
Anybody, any other public comment, anything? Okay, thank you so very much. Good luck. Thank you, Aubrey, for all your hard work. We're going to move on to agenda item 5D, which is discussion and possible action on the roundabout design for the East Fifth Street reconstruction project located between Fairview Drive and Marsh Road. And I see that Brian, come on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I am Brian Byrne, the Transportation Traffic Engineer. Just 1 second. Before I begin, I just want to make a correction for the record that the project limits for the Fairview Drive and Marsh Road, it's Marsh Road, not March Road, listed in the staff report.
Marsh like a swamp.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So yes, I'll be presenting on the East Fifth Street roundabout at Fairview intersection. Today, I will go over the project overview and current status, the existing conditions, the alternatives that we have, and our recommendation. This project includes the expansion of the roundabout located at East Fifth Street and Fairview Drive, along with pavement preservation, water line replacements, and ADA upgrades between Fairview Drive and Marsh Road. Early on, there was a traffic impact study completed for the Eagle Valley Middle School expansion. They were looking to expand to have a capacity of 950 students. They currently occupy 772. And in that report, there was a recommendation for a right turn lane on Carson River Road. That is currently 100% designed and going out to bid here in March, and is expected to be constructed summer of 2022. Further on, we'll go over some alternatives that that came out of the traffic impact study, and so that's what we'll be going over to proceed with the 30% design. So some criteria and considerations that we took, that we outlined here is kind of what we kind of use to evaluate which recommendation we might come forward with. Our code, Title 18 Appendix, states that our overall level of service is supposed to be D or better, and that is for the overall intersection, not necessarily a specific leg. All the traffic information besides the existing condition was based on our 2050 traffic volumes, so we projected those out, and that's what these values and analysis were completed on. Other things we considered were our traffic movements, configuration safety, head and bike, and kind of the overall size of the roundabout. And before I proceed, Chris Martinovich would like to provide a few comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some additional context for the board's consideration. The table included in this particular slide is sort of a level of service breakdown, A through F. I think we've spoken about level of service in the past. Roundabouts sort of fall in between a signalized versus an unsignalized intersection. And so when we look at level of service, they are just numbers, but there isn't a specific breakdown for a roundabout level of service. Some of the key elements we look at when roundabout is not so much the letter, but it's sort of that volume to capacity ratio. In general, roundabouts with a volume to capacity ratio of less than 1 operate relatively well. Once we start getting over 1, that's when the roundabout becomes a little bit more congested and it becomes a little bit harder for vehicles to enter and circulate. So just because you see a level of service D or E or F doesn't necessarily mean that volume traffic isn't going through. It's just the letter grade essentially assigned to it. It's that volume to capacity ratio number that it's sort of what we use and analyze in terms of a roundabout design. So I just wanted to provide that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as Brian mentioned, that these volumes are 2050 volumes. The volumes we're using are those in our travel demand model, or CAMPO's travel demand model. Those include a number of developments that we've identified, including full build-out of Lampa Ranch, not only the part of the north part, but the south part of Blackstone development, as well as the Lampa East, which is the area between the freeway and Airport Road and along Bud-Eye Way there. So that's all built into the background model, along with other regional growth that's just anticipated to occur based on historical trends and data. So 2050 is a long way out, and there's a lot of things that could change in the area, but we're using the best available data that we have at this time, and our travel demand model is that. We update our travel demand model every couple of years. CAMPO is planning to update their travel demand model probably late 2022, early 2023. And so that's just something we monitor and try to keep on top of periodically. So I want to provide that background and context to this group. Brian, all yours.
Thank you, Chris. So just before I move on, I just kind of want to emphasize that level of service D from a time perspective is that 25 to 35 second of delay range. So in our existing condition, we currently have a single lane roundabout with single lane entry and exit. I'm sure you all are aware of. We have a channelized right turn lane for the east and westbound traffic, and below is kind of outlines an overall level service of F in current conditions. One number I would like to highlight here is our southbound approach, and our delay there is roughly 4.5 minutes, so it's a very significant delay. So I just wanted to bring highlight to that. We'll jump into our first alternative here, which, and before I guess I jump in, I just want to say these are conceptual, not designs. So these are just schematics of just trying to illustrate lane configurations and not really what the design is going to be out in the actual intersection. So alternative one would have 2 lanes in the north and southbound direction with east and westbound right turn lanes. So we'd be adding another through lane in the north and southbound direction. Some advantages here is that we would increase the capacity with simpler movements. And what I mean by that is we're trying to bring the capacity, increase capacity, but with as very little as we possibly can, so we can have a safer movement, less points of conflict, and also shorter distances for ped and bikes to cross. So we're trying to reduce that overall footprint, but still increase capacity. One of the disadvantages of this alternative is that it does slightly exceed the level of service of D criteria. Back to that kind of 25 to 35 second delay, this one has an overall of about 37.7. So we're just outside of that level of service D criteria. However, we have reduced our southbound approach by more than 3 minutes. So 4.5 to 1 minute. So big change there. The second alternative is now including 2 circular lanes inside the roundabout with 2 entry and exit lanes and 1 east and westbound exit lane. So as before, we only kind of had the 2 lanes in north and southbound direction. This one has 2 full circulating lanes inside the roundabout. The advantages here is that it does meet our level of service throughout and overall, so it has a significant improvement at this intersection. Some of the disadvantages are the increased points of conflict, and so what I mean by that is we have more lanes, more movements potentially for conflict. It still is a major reduction from a signalized intersection. However, it is slightly more than our current condition of a single lane roundabout. It creates shorter and flatter entry curves, and what I mean by that is that they're not as sharp, which may allow for higher speeds to approach the intersection. So that's kind of one of the disadvantages of a roundabout getting really big, and kind of the limitations we have with right-of-way and other infrastructure around that intersection. And lastly, we do have driver confusion. You know, we will have a lot more lanes, a lot more movements, and a lot more education to be provided to maneuver this roundabout. Our last alternative is more or less the same. However, it now introduces 2 exit lanes all the way on all legs. So this is kind of the full build out, the largest of it, the biggest footprint of impacts, and also the longest distance for pedestrian and bicycle crossings. So although it meets the level of service, it also is a very large roundabout. And kind of before I move on to our recommendation, I just want to really emphasize that the level of service that we've kind of listed throughout here is only in the AM peak hour. So the delays that we have are only for 1 hour of the day, and the rest of the day is functioning at a very high capacity of level services A and B. So the staff recommends alternative 1, which is 2 lanes in the north and southbound direction with the east and westbound right turn lanes. However, it does slightly exceed the level service of D. It is with the 20/50 projections, and it is for 1 hour of the day. It has fewer vehicle contact points, simpler traffic movements, and a smaller footprint. I'm open for any questions or comments.
Does anybody have any questions?
I got a quick comment. Way back when, this is a 4-way stop, and it was, let's put in a traffic signal. And we talked about it, said, why don't we try a roundabout? And it was not the best. It was, just kind of made to fit, and I think it's worked remarkably well. So, I think these are very good designs, and all the approach roadways in the future still be single lane, right? North Fifth Street's going to be a single lane approach. Fairview, single lane approach, until you get to the roundabout, right? So you're not going to have any 4-lane roadways. So I think this should work fine.
No, let's get that on the record better. So we have
Okay,
no
I
plan.
will-
Yeah, let's
The future.
run that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, so Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. At this point, Fifth Street is anticipated to remain a 2-lane road, 1 lane in each direction. We are providing additional widening at the roundabout of Fairview, and that's to provide additional capacity through the roundabout itself. At this point, given today's traffic volumes that we understand Fairview, we're going to keep Fairview as a whole of a 2-lane road. It'll just widen to 4 lanes at the roundabout. But should we need to increase Fairview at some point in the future because of development or other factors occur, we've already set up a design that could accommodate that, up into the 2050 timeframe.
Good. Thanks for the clarification.
Right. I was gonna say, wait a second.
Thank you.
Review. I think we wanted to do better on Fifth, but no access to do so. No right of ways. So talk to me on alternative 1 versus 2 and 3. So if we do alternative 1, we have all of the necessary right of way. So that's another plus to the project, right? Is we already have the right of way and can accomplish the project.
Yes, we will have some impacts to the surrounding infrastructure, but it should fall all within our existing right-of-way.
Right, which is another good positive piece, Mr. Dotson.
So I assume that alternatives 2 and 3 don't have the right of way.
I'll step in, Brian. There is some challenge with the northeast corner. That parcel's owned by the state. And then as well as the south, I think the southwest corner is owned by the state as well, but it's pretty far offset over there. So it's sort of that northeast corner that's sort of the challenge we're working with. The other two corners are owned by the city.
So anybody, so what we have on Stewart Street that people are starting to get used to is accurate, though, where you said they really can speed up. They have figured it out to enter. Is that the alternative close to 3, but it actually has some extra right hands too? So none of these models are exactly what's at Stewart Street.
No, these are slightly different configurations. I mean, there is a multi-lane at Stewart Street, but the advantage here is that we have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of extending out on the approaches to kind of increase better safety features, to kind of meander per se, to increase those flared entry curves.
That flexibility goes down when they become multi-lane approaches. The flexibility to maneuver into the roundabout becomes a little bit more of a challenge.
And just as a reminder for those that weren't on the board when this was originally discussed because of the school district. So I'm just disclosing I live out in this neighborhood, but when school is in session, the objective was we have to improve this roundabout because if there's an emergency that occurs, we're trapping both, right? The residents all in that area and the school. And so Fifth Street's got one way out and straight down. And so I think that it's good to plan for where are we going in the future, all the developments for Fifth Street itself, Solomon, like you said, all that Lampa project was only going to put more pressure on this particular area. So I think we're doing the right thing, actually jumping ahead and not waiting until I have an extreme problem there, so that we're finally being forward thinking and trying to, I know projects take 10 years and people don't really understand that either, that you're really planning and getting ahead of this. So is there a general agreement that we like alternative 1? Yes? Yes? Everybody good? Okay. I'll ask just if there's any general public comment before we take any. I know, I'm just trying to get in the new mode here, right? I don't see any, so if we'd like a motion to support alternative 1, that would be great. Mr. Dotson?
I move to direct staff to pursue the recommended roundabout design concept as discussed.
Do I have a second?
I second.
And again, on discussion for the record, just because I think it needs to be clearly stated, that would be alternative 1. Right? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move on to agenda item 5E, which is discussion and possible action for determination of the lowest responsive bidder pursuant to Chapter 388 to Herback for a total amount of $1,136,611.03. You can't forget the 3 pennies. Before I take this item, is there any public comment on it? Just to clear that record. So oftentimes then on contracts, does any member of the commission have a question for staff? Or is everybody okay? I'll accept a motion if there's no questions. Chaz?
I move to award the contract as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for approval of this contract. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brian. It's great to get to know you.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to now move on to agenda item 5F, which is discussion and possible action regarding contract 213-00284 for HDR Engineering to perform civil engineering services for our Appian Way intersection and traffic signal. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes. NRS 8.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item or project and are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. Further, neither Chris nor I have any reason to believe that the outcome of this item will impact the terms of his employment with the city. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Once again, is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this contract? Seeing none, is there any member of the commission that has a specific question on the contract? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Mr. McQuarrie?
I move to approve the contract as presented.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item number 6, which is our non-action items. May I have the transportation manager report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Wanted to give a little update. We are Western Nevada Safe Routes to School update. We are starting to work with Douglas County on development of a Western Nevada Safe Routes to School plan with them. So we're really excited. Scott and Kelly are going to be helping with that effort, and we're really excited to work with Douglas County on that partnership. As was mentioned earlier in the previous meeting, or maybe earlier in this meeting, we are waiting for additional appropriations related to our Western Nevada Safe Routes to School program, as well as to the Williams Street corridor for some utility work and some other improvements out there. So we're looking forward to those and getting those projects underway as soon as that funding is officially here. So looking forward to that. As I mentioned earlier, next meeting, we will bring our Regional Transportation Commission draft budgets to this for discussion and input from this board. So look forward to that. And lastly, wanted to just give a little update on William Street. We are continuing our survey period. Our outreach period has closed for this first phase of outreach. We're continuing now to kind of develop some, based on all the comments we've received, develop some conceptual design concepts, and we'll be going back out to the public here probably in April. And this board will be involved in some of those design concepts going forward in May and June as we complete the feasibility study and the initial design concepts. Much more opportunity for public input, so I appreciate all those who have commented to this point, and for those businesses and other members who are interested in William Street, keep looking for those and keep checking carsonproud.com for that information. So that is what I had for the manager's report today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to then item 6B, our operations activity report, please.
I'll be happy to answer any questions. This is the report for January 2022.
I'm always, I did have a question. Just in general, when I look down at the sign refurbishment, replacement due to graffiti, is refurbishment only from I'm trying to determine, is that 208 that had graffiti?
I believe it is number of signs.
And then do you know, when we do those, do we put in for recovery if we can figure out who did the graffiti?
I do not know how we go about seeking reimbursement for that. We can certainly look, and I can certainly check with Rick Cooley, our street operations manager, to see what the status is. I do know that it was in the area around the North Walmart that a number of buildings and signs were tagged, and so this was sort of that way to clean that area up.
Mr. McQuarrie, you have a question?
Well, it was the same question.
Oh.
So,
Great minds do think alike here. Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness, look at all of that. I'm not impressed with that number, but I am impressed with the staff that respond immediately to eliminate that graffiti. So thanks for that part, but I'm sad we have to do it. So,
Looking at the street operations report and driving around town, these guys are busy.
it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
And they're doing a good job, and if it doesn't snow, they can do more.
Did you hear that?
Our street crews do a wonderful job, and they're always out there, taking care of all those mini needs, even, sweeping a sidewalk on a street. They're out there taking care of that stuff. They do great work here, so.
Yeah, we really have them really proud work. Okay, we'll go on to agenda item 6C for our project status report. And is Brian going to do that? Great.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Byrne, Transportation Traffic Engineer. As I go through these, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions as I go through them. First on our list, we have the multi-use path to Edmond Sports Complex. Currently, we have a 90% design completed. However, portions of the path do fall within BLM property, and the city has submitted an application to the BLM and to getting that authorized. They kind of expect that to come through in spring or summer, but it has delayed our construction till 2023.
Brian, do you follow up on that with BLM at all? Seems like this has been quite a while in the mix here.
Yes, I did follow up with it last week, and that seemed to still be the same update.
Status.
Next is the Kings Canyon Trailhead Improvements and Roadway Reconstruction Project. They have issued a pause on that due to the wet and muddy conditions at the site. The final grading of the slopes and installations of the permanent erosion control measures will resume in spring once the soil conditions allow access.
Can I ask on this project, so is everything open up for the public up there, all their driveways, there's no more issues for
I'll
the
take that one.
residents?
All the driveways are open. All the parking area is open as well. I believe the Kings Canyon Waterfall Trail is still closed because there is no formal connection quite yet. But the parking area is open. I think the Parks and Open Space Department are kind of coordinating the trail activities.
Thank you.
And Chris, on this one, if you had to do it over again, would it work if Carson City oversaw the project rather than federal lands?
Greg, that's a very interesting question.
You have that option on future projects.
I think it's something we're going to consider.
They're going to allow us to take them in the future?
They could have. They didn't necessarily encourage it, but yeah, you can do that.
I think there are a number of lessons learned, to Dan's point earlier on South Carson Street, where we can figure out some tweaks to our processes and coordination activities with federal lands to make projects go a little bit smoother.
Interesting.
If I may,
realize
Madam
that.
Chair, just chime in on
Yes.
that. I would concur with that. Having done projects the both ways, I think if we can keep as much as possible local, we're better off. I'll just say that.
Well, and speed, right, for responses. Okay. Interesting. I didn't realize we could select that option. Okay. Next one. Oops.
Thank you. Next is the Root Street Rehabilitation Project. This project is currently about to go out to bid here very shortly this month, and construction is anticipated to start in May or June. Our District 2 Long Street project, the contractor is currently still working on the sewer line replacement and is waiting on material delivery. The contractor has also started the concrete improvements, and paving is still planned for the spring.
Was this one on target for time, or did we have to push? Seems like this one's forever.
Yeah, I believe the contractor delay in the materials might have pushed it a little bit. So yeah.
Okay.
The Robinson Area Sewer Replacement Project, they will continue constructing the water main connections on the cross streets and water service through March. The construction of the new sewer main on Telegraph Street is scheduled to begin in late March and continue into May. The Colorado Street CBG pavement project, the NDOT has issued the notice to proceed, and the project is currently out to bid. We are expecting construction to begin this summer.
Do you know on that project, did we get everything? Did anything have to get value engineered out from what this committee selected in the designs? How'd we do?
We're hoping that bids come in well and we can build everything we've designed, which includes enhanced pedestrian crossings at a number of locations and some other improvements, ADA improvements, new sidewalk infrastructure, and then of course the reconstruction of the roadway itself.
Okay. Well, keep us posted. Thank you.
Thanks. The Center Drive reconstruction project was a previous item of discussion, and so that will be anticipated to start construction in April.
Brian, on that one, I noticed the budget figure is a little light from the contract amount, so will you adjust that? I assume that's not an issue.
Oh, yes, I will update that total budget. Next is the 2021 school zones. All the beacons at each school are operational, and the final punch list work remains. The East Fifth Street reconstruction project, I gave an update earlier regarding the right turn lane, and we'll be moving forward with the 30% design. We have our District 4 pavement preservation projects for Curry Street, Solomon Road, and Silver Sage. Those are all at 100% design levels, and we're looking to advertise those this month.
Brian, question on, let's see, on Curry Street, there's ADA upgrades on Kuntz attached to that. When I drove by the other day, the private development that goes up the hill at the end of Kuntz doesn't have any sidewalk at all. And I know we, talked about complete streets and everything the city can do. I just want to make sure on the private developments, when you guys can influence that to make sure that they have a sidewalk to walk into.
I appreciate that comment, Commissioner Novak, and we certainly strive to make those improvements everywhere we can, yes. I'm not sure exactly what happened for that particular road at that particular development.
There's a lot of steps to go up into that.
There's a lot of steps.
But there's no sidewalk.
Is that up Damon? Or
No,
is
it's by the Galaxy Fandango.
the other way.
That
Okay.
one.
And lastly is the East William Complete Street project. We got a brief update on that earlier, but the drafts for this feasibility studies are anticipated to be completed in June, so.
I have a comment on that one as well. Once upon a time, William was NDOT, and the other side of the freeway, it still is NDOT. NDOT applies their strict access control, access management standards. And I'd like it in the future to hear Carson City discussion about adopting similar standards here. I know we adopted our complete street emphasis, but I'm thinking if we can do a better job on access management, that'll help safety and operations in the future too.
Are you thinking maybe an item to the board or?
Just a briefing, or, do we want to pursue adopting the NDOT version, or,
Okay.
if we need to develop our own. If you have one that's out there, it's good. Let's try and.
Okay, we can put something together and at a future meeting, bring an item for discussion and direction if that meets your need.
Yes, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, and that's all I
Thank you
have.
so much.
Thank you.
So I just heard one future agenda item potentially. Is there, anybody else have anything they want us to work on or consider? Nope. Okay. Anybody have any comments or anything? We're good tonight. Oh, okay. Any additional or final staff comments before I ask for final? We're good? Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, which is final public comment. Anyone have any public comment? No? With that, then we're going to move on to, with there no objection, we're adjourned. Thank you all so much for a good meeting. Got a lot done.